All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, or to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. So it looks like we had some questions come in over the weekend. So we will start with Todd B says, "Hello, I'm extremely distracted when hitting out of my own shadow. Play much better on holes when I don't see my shadow. Any advice?" Yeah, I don't think I have a lot of experience with that one. Yeah, I'd say that's kind of something you just have to get over. I think. Yeah, your focus should be on not on your shadow. So I would try to keep your focus on. I understand, like with putting, like if your shadow is in your line, it can be difficult to see the line. But while you are hitting a ball, your focus should be on the ball and hitting the ball. So I would just try to focus in on the ball, and that should help with not being distracted by your shadow. All right, let's keep going. So Cal Bear says, "Hi Q, I'm using a divot board to make sure I'm striking the ball first. Unfortunately, I'm consistently striking the board 2 to 5 inches before the ball. I'm trying to hold my lag and holding and transfer my weight to the lead leg, but still have trouble. Any thoughts?" Yeah, I actually a little while ago I made a video that kind of went over the main things that I see when I see people struggling with chunk shots. So number one is going to be ball position, because really when you're hitting behind the ball, what's happening is the bottom of your swing arc, right? So if we imagine our swing arc is like this, it works down, it reaches a bottom point, and then it works back up, right? So we want the bottom of this swing arc to be in front of the ball on the target side of the ball and slightly below the ball. Usually it's around 3 or 4 inches. When you look at the best players in the world, they've measured this. The bottom of the swing is about 3 or 4 inches in front of the ball. So if we're kind of looking here, I got my ball here. If we think of this, where the tape is here being the bottom of the swing, right, the middle of this tape, it would be like that, right? So the club's coming down, hits the ball in the ground roughly at the same time. Then the club goes into the ground. Then it comes up out of the ground. Usually, the low point of your swing is going to typically be about the middle of the divot, right? So if you're hitting 2 or 5 inches behind the ball, that means the middle of your swing or the bottom of your swing is occurring most likely at or before the ball. So if the bottom of your swing is occurring at the ball, your best case scenario is to just kind of pick it clean or hit it thin. Really, is kind of the best case scenario. Because if you hit the ground at all or much at all, you're going to chunk it. And if it's far enough behind the ball, you kind of have to hit up on the ball. And your best case scenario is to hit it thin. But most of the time, you're going to chop it, chunk it, or blade it or something like that. So the first thing I would look at is your ball position. I find that a lot of people, especially with the longer clubs like the fairway woods and hybrids, I think it's just something in our brain like, okay, this is a wood. I need to play it more forward because it's a wood, because my driver is a wood. We all know we want to hit our driver more forward, but it's not really the case. When you're hitting the ball off of the ground, the bottom of the swing needs to be in front of the ball. Now, you might get a perfect lie or a lie where the ball is really sitting up on the grass like it's on a tee. In that situation, you could probably get away with hitting up on the ball. But most of the situations you're going to have aren't going to be like that. So what we need to do is we need the bottom of the swing to be on the target side of the ball. So ball position's a fairly easy adjustment to make that a little bit better. So what I like to see is I like to see the ball position for shots off the ground, middle to just forward of the middle for just kind of like a standard kind of shot. Right now, if you're trying to hit the ball really low, you can put the ball more back in the stance. If you're trying to hit the ball higher, you can play it a little bit more forward. But keep in mind, the more forward that you play it, the harder it's going to be to get the bottom of the swing to be in front of the ball. All right. So like I said, if we look at this, if we look at this stick here and we say, okay, this stick is exactly in the middle of my stance, I think that's a good ball position right there, where like the back of the ball is on the stick, or the middle of the ball on the stick. Anywhere in that area is generally going to be a good place to be. That's going to make it easier. If your ball position is way up here, which is a very common thing that I see amongst people, just people push the ball position really far forward, it's just going to make it so much more difficult to swing to to make ball first contact, because that low point of the swing, it's relative to the ball, right? So if my low point is right here, right, well, that's going to be a low point that's 4 inches in front of the ball. Well, if I have my ball position way up here, well, now my low point is where the ball is, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is hip sway. That's the second thing I like to look at with people who are chunking. So that'd be in the backswing. If we were to draw a line on the outside of the hip, I'd want to see you kind of move into that line to start the backswing. But as you get up to the top of the swing, I'd like to actually see you create a little bit of a space between your hip and that line. That's going to make it easier for you to get the bottom of your swing more in front of the ball. What I see in a lot of golfers is that hip gets on the other side of that line. And that's going to make it more difficult to get your weight to go forward. If your weight's way over here and it needs to go that way, it's just a farther way to go. So if we have our hips more in the center, center between our feet at the top, it makes it a lot easier to keep the hips moving forward. All right. So a chair drill and like I said, I'll tell you where you can find this video here in a second. But a chair drill where you put a chair on the outside of your hips and then you create a little bit of space between your hip and that chair. That'd be good. Now, quick note with this, what I don't want you to do is what's called a reverse weight shift, where we load up on the lead side first. We're going to load up into the trail side, and then as we get to the top, we're going to create a little bit of space between the hip and line to get the momentum, to have our hips in a good spot and to help you get a little bit of momentum moving in that direction. So that would be that drill. The next thing I'd like to look at is are we just getting a full weight shift to the lead side? Are we getting our momentum going to the lead side? Are we finishing on our lead side? That sort of thing. So that would be the step drill. Start with our feet together, throw the club back. As you throw the club back, you step forward, you land, you push through, you come all the way into a full finish try to feel like all your weight's on your lead foot. And then you transfer that same feeling to a practice swing, then to the ball. And again, I go through progression in the video. So that's the next thing. The thing I look at after that is shallowing out the club. Are we shallowing out the club too much? I know we've made a push here in the last couple of years, right, talking about shallowing out the club, and it wouldn't surprise me if there are people out there just completely overdoing it. So if you think about it, when you over shallow out the club, right, you think about it this way. If I'm standing at home plate, I'm a right-handed batter, right? I got center field's out straight in front of me here. I got first base over here. If I swing in the direction of first base, right, that's very into out, very shallow, where's my club going to bottom out at? It's going to bottom out back here, right? So the more I swing into out, the more my low point's going to be pushed away from the target. The more I swing out to in over the top, the more the low point's going to push toward my target. This is a big reason why a lot of people come over the top, because it makes it easier to make ball first contact when you do that, where it can, depending on other things that are going on in your swing. So if you're over shallowing out the club, right, you got this club way behind you too much, that can lead to chunk shots, right? So once we shallow out the club, I would just try to feel like you're rotating more. And with that rotation, that will help you to neutralize things. So if I'm coming down like this, right, that's too shallow. If I add more rotation to my body, well, now that club is neutralized, and my path is going to get better, and also my ball contact's more likely going to get better as well. Right. So that's just the feeling of kind of more of an over the top kind of feeling. Not necessarily literally doing that, right? But the feel of coming over the top may help you to get into a better position. It's the fault, feel, reel approach, right? The fault is too shallow, too much from the inside. The feel is actually over the top, but hopefully the reel is somewhere in between. And if you overdo it, you can just tone it down. And then the last piece that I look at typically is the release of the club. If I release the club early, if I'm here and I release it, right, I'm going to hit the ground behind the ball. If I'm here and I release it really, really late, I'm going to hit the ground way up there, right? So I know a lot of you are thinking, well, yeah, okay, the release, that's it. I have an early release. And I know a lot of you are thinking that because the overwhelming majority of recreational golfers have an early release. And I think that's the overwhelming majority of people that are on here. So I beg you, don't just go and think that that's the problem. As long as you have good ball position, you are, don't have a hip sway, you're shifting your weight properly to your lead side, and you're not over shallowing out the club, you can make ball first contact without an early release, with an early release, without working on your early release. It's not it's something that makes it a little bit more difficult. So the reason why I tell you this is because changing the release of the club is a difficult thing to change. It takes time, repetition. It just takes a lot more work to change. Whereas, it would be something you would have to do over a long period of time, a lot of reps. Whereas, all the other things I mentioned, ball position, hip sway, weight shift, these things can typically be worked out very quickly. It usually doesn't take much time. It's just those things are more tweaks. The release is a very, very big thing to change in the swing. It just takes a lot of time and repetition. So I beg you, don't take, the release, that's my problem. It's not. It's part of the problem. It can be part of the problem amongst other things that the release can cause, early release can cause, but it's not the number one thing that's keeping you from doing it. All right. So that's why I would look at that. So let me put a link to the video. I go over all those drills in the video. So let me put the link to the video in the chat. So bear with me here. I'm just trying to get the page where it is. All right. So in the chat, I just posted the link to the video. So if you want to go check that out, if you're struggling with the chunks, highly recommend that you do. Goes through all the things that I talked about. All right. So Neil M says, while going through the 20-minute distance fix, the most noticeable change in speed on initial assessment was using the sumo step. Are there other drills to use to help with that movement? Not really. It's just the sumo step. I mean, that's the drill. The sumo step. There's variations of the sumo step, like you can do, one where you step to the right, then step to the left, right? But all the sumo step is just variations of the sumo step. So that's really the best drill out there to work on the ground force stuff. All right, so Kevin C says, hi, in the 20-minute shallowing videos, the first lesson is asking to hook the ball. Do I need to pay attention to club path in this? Hook it with an into out path. It seems easier to hook the ball when I'm not actively thinking that I need to swing into out. All right, so drill number 1, you do not need to swing into out. All we're asking you to do in drill number 1 is get the face closed enough so that it can hook. So it doesn't matter the path in this situation. It only matters that the face is closed to the path, right? That's what's going to produce the hook, is the face being closed to the path. So if it's a pull hook, totally fine. It goes on to say, in other words, a pull hook is easier for me to produce than a push hook and have the ball draw back. Is this okay for the lesson reps? Yes. So for drill number 1, this is okay. It only matters that it hooks. Hook the snot out of it. That's all that really matters. Get the 10 in a row. Once you get the 10 in a row, now we know, hey, you're good at hooking the ball. Now we're ready for the next step, which is going to be getting the ball to start to the right and hook to the left. Right. So that's drill number 2. That's where you're going to do that. And in drill number 2, Clay goes through several things, like using a barrier, like an impact bag or something like that, to force the path to be more from the inside. So that way you can get the ball to start from the right and then hook to the left. So drill number 1, totally okay to not swing into out. It's all about just getting the ball to hook. Get good at getting the ball to hook. Once you get that, then you go to drill number 2. This is where it does matter. You want to swing into out and follow the protocol in there that Clay goes over, and you'll be in good shape. All right, so Pete G said, hi, my question is about the role of the arms in generating club head speed. My issue is that I think the more I try to speed up my arms, the slower my club head speed. Maybe I'm letting the arms get in the way of the parts of the body that really generate club head speed. Thanks. So the arms play a pivotal role in the amount of club head speed that you can generate. In fact, most of your speed is going to come from your arms. So think about it this way. If I took away your arms, right, and I took this club and I just attached it to your shoulder like this, how much speed do you think you could generate just with your body, right? Surprisingly, not very much. Now think about it this way. Imagine I took your body and I tied you to a tree trunk, right? I chained you to a tree trunk, gave you a club, and now, without turning your body, you got to create club head speed. I can tell you right now, I can create a lot more club head speed going like this, right? with my arms. So most of your club head speed is going to come from your arms. If you are not getting, if you're losing club head speed, what are these? Trying to get the right wording here that you mentioned. Questions about the rolling arms. My issue is that I think the more I try to speed up my arms, the slower my club head speed. So what might be going on is you might be really trying to tense up the grip, right? I want you to feel like your arms are loose, like your arms are noodles, and you're using your body to create arm speed, right? That's what I would try to feel like, that you're whipping, just like if you're throwing a ball, right? If I was throwing a ball as hard as I could, I'm going to turn my body, I'm going to whip my arm, right? That's what I want you to feel like you're doing with your body and your arms. You're whipping the club with your body and your arms. That's what I try to feel like. All right, let's keep going. So Dino says, how do I navigate a downhill lie in a greed side bunker? One of the toughest shots out there in golf. It's going to come out really low. Really, if you're short-sighted from that position, it's really, you just kind of have to take your medicine and understand that you're not going to get it close, because that ball is going to come out low. And when it comes out low, it's not going to spin a lot. It's not going to have a lot of stopping power, right? What gives the ball stopping power is spin, which you can get spin, but your angle of descent, which is, kind of the landing angle of the ball, if that angle of descent is flatter, right, even if it has a lot of spin, it's going to make it difficult to get it to stop, right? If you have a higher angle of descent, right, and I have a lot of spin, you can spin it back. You can spin back bunker shots sometimes, right? But it's just going to be very difficult from a downhill lie, because it's just going to come out low. So you navigate it the same way you would a normal bunker shot. We just have to have the understanding that it's going to come out low. So you hit it the same exact way. Open the club face, right? Get that club face open, wide stance. And what we want to do is we want to swing with the slope, right? That's a big key to this. So what I mean by that is, we talk about how in the stable fluid spine section, how we want to have a 6 to 8 degree angle. Well, that's relative to your horizon, right? Or relative to the ground that you're hitting off of, right? So if my ground is angled down, right, then my spine is going to go with that. I need to swing with the slope. Because if I keep that same spine angle relative to the target, but the ground is like this, well, I'm going to tend to hit more behind the ball, right? And you're either going to chunk it, or the club's going to come back up out of the sand and you're going to skull it out of the sand, right? So it's one of those two things that's going to happen if you hit too far behind the ball. So we want to make sure that we're not doing that, and we're going with the slope. Now, make sure you're using a high lofted wedge. Make sure that you're opening up the face as much as possible. So I would say the key with a downhill bunker shot would be to go with the slope. And then on the other side of that, try to use as much loft as you possibly can, because the downhill slope is going to make the ball come out lower. So opening the club face, get that club face open, use a high lofted wedge, 60 degree wedge, something like that, wide open club face, and try to keep the loft on the face. So the way that you do that, a good feel that I like is to feel like that club face is always pointing back toward you. So see how this club face is pointing back toward me? If I were to kind of roll my hands over and close the face, well, look, that club face is now pointing that way, right? I want it to be pointing back at me. I want to be almost like I'm looking in the mirror in this club face. That's what I want to feel like. So wide open club face. I'm going to smack that sand, right? I'm going to keep the loft on it. And what we want to understand is that ball, again, it's going to come out low, right? So because of that, so let's say you're short-sighted, right? Take your medicine. You're going to be lucky to get it close, right? If you get close, it's just going to be luck, right? If it may work out in your favor if you have a longer bunker shot and you need the ball to run out a little bit, because it's going to come out lower and it's going to run out some. So that's really how you have to approach it. But it's a very difficult shot. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, that's a cinch, you just do this. Downhill bunker shots are really the toughest ones for sure. They're really tough when you end up having to take like a weird stance or something, something like that. If it's not like a normal stance. Sometimes that can happen because you get the downhill bunker shots. A lot of times you got one foot that's in the bunker and one foot that's not because it's on the it's on the back side of the bunker, right? And that makes it even more difficult a lot of times. All right, keep the questions coming. Let me see here. Didn't have any questions, but I just refreshed it to see if there's any new one. Yep, so no new ones in there as of yet. So if you got a new question, bring it on. If not, no worries. So Paul B says, how do you practice on a mat in a way that feels more like real golf and avoids creating bad habits? Well, really the only thing is the ground contact, right? So the only thing that like a mat really does that's going to create bad habits is it may not give you great feedback on whether you're making ball first contact. So what you can do, one is use a divot board. These things are awesome. You can get them from, if you go to our resources tab on the website at the top of the screen there, they'll take you to a page with all the stuff that we recommend. This is one of the things that we recommend. If you hit this, right, like a mat, it's going to show you, it's got this sequence on here. It's going to show you exactly where you're hitting the ground in relation to the ball. So you place the ball right here on the dot, and it just shows you exactly where you hit it. So one of these would be a big help. I'd highly recommend that. Like I said, you can get those from the resources tab. Outside of that, what you can do is you can use a towel, place it on the mat, flat on the mat, about a club head width behind the ball. So I don't have any towels handy in here, but that's just basically how it would go on there. One thing better than that would be using something like a speed trap. So this is a speed trap. This is just a piece of plexiglass, basically. But I really like to use this off of mats because it gives you some really great feedback. So you use the towel. If you hit the towel, right, then you know if you are chunking it or not, right? The problem with the towel, which the towel's great, it's great, but it's soft, right? So when you hit a towel, you may not be able to. I just noticed this with students, right? So I've had students that I've said, hey, use the towel, and they do, and then they send me videos and they're hitting the towel before the ball, but they don't really know. And it's just because, when I use it, I can feel it, but I can understand how some people may not be able to feel it because the towel's soft. The mat's kind of soft, right? So it's not that much of a different feeling, right? Whereas this is hard plastic. It's like plexiglass, right? This is going to be a very different feel than if I hit the mat. So again, I'm going to put the ball about a club head in front. I also like that it has it on the side. So if you're kind of getting way off with your strike location, you can also check that. But yeah, it gives you, if I come down, I'm going to hear that. If I come down and I hit the ball solidly and I miss it, I know that I'm making good ball first contact. So again, these are also in the resources tab. If you go to that, it comes with these little bumpers that go on that create a little bit of a path for the club. So if you're someone who's coming over the top, right, you're coming over the top like this, you can put one here and one here. And if you go over the top, you'll hit it, right? So it kind of encourages an into out path. It also has it to where you can put it on both sides and create a really, really tight slot for that club to go through. And you can really kind of groove your path a little bit better. So this works great. These, I don't know how much these are. If I had to guess, it's probably $100 with the bumpers and everything. But if you don't want to spend $100 on a divot board or this, I think the divot boards are around $100 too. You can use just like a cutting board. There's The plastic cutting boards out there, again, they have that audible click sound. So I think you can get those pretty cheap. If you go to your kitchen section of any store like Target or Walmart, something like that, they probably have the plastic cutting boards. Now, I don't know. I haven't used one for a substantial amount of time to really know, okay, is that going to hold up? But it would definitely be a cheaper option. I can't imagine those cutting boards are more than $5 or $10. I can't imagine that. So that could also be an option that you can use. So I think they even have like smaller ones too that you can use. I would just use something that isn't going to damage your club and isn't going to break, right? So usually the kind of that plastic that they use, it's pretty durable, but it's also not so rigid that it's going to break your club. So please don't use like glass cutting boards or anything like that. That can be dangerous. You don't want to be hitting that. But this is just like plexiglass, right? You could probably go to a craft store or something, a hobby store of some sort that sells this plexiglass, and you could just use that. There's also the club fitters. They use the plastic boards to check the line angle of your clubs, right? It's basically the same thing as this. So that could also be used if you have something like that. So really, that's really the only thing for the most part that I know of that would be like a bad habit, because on a mat, when you hit the mat, the club's not going to dig into the mat like it does on the ground, right? For the normal ground, this leading edge of the club is going to hit that ground, and then it's going to dig into that ground, right? Whereas on a mat, especially if you're someone who's coming in already very level with the ball, which a lot of people are, right? Especially if we have like an early release or something like that. I mean, your club's just coming down and coming in very level and barely grazing the turf, right? Or barely grazing the mat. Well, you could be hitting 3 or 4 inches behind the ball and you wouldn't even know. But you do that out in the course, and now it's a chunk shot. So that's really kind of the only thing that I would see. All right, let's keep going here. Sorry, I lost my. All right, here we go. So Dave B says, "Hi Q, can you speak to the perfect setup, specifically the lead trail elbows, how they should be facing? Thanks." A lot of this depends on your grip, right? So if you have a stronger grip where your lead hand's more on top, then your trail elbow is going to be more pointed outward, right? If you have a weaker grip, it's going to be more pointed in, right? Same thing with the trail arm, right? The trail arm, if I have a stronger grip, my elbow is going to be pointing more in. If I have a weaker grip, it's going to be pointing more out. So it's really more about your grip and what the setup's going to be as far as where your arms are at. So I can take a weak grip, but it'd be difficult to have my weak grip, but then have my elbow kind of pointing in the same direction as a stronger grip. So it really just depends on the grip. It's really, the main thing is I just don't want to have my elbows out like this, right? No matter what grip I have, if I have a strong grip, I don't want to have my elbows way out like this, and I don't want to have them in like that. If I have a stronger grip, my elbow's going to be pointing more out, which is totally fine. And this elbow's going to be pointing more in, and vice versa. But I just don't want it to be way out. This is really the only thing. So I wouldn't overthink it too much, really. It's really just more about the grip that you have. There's no perfect place to be. I take that back. The perfect place to be for your setup is the setup that allows you, specifically you, to get in the best position. So you can play around with it. Play around with where your elbow is pointing. Play around with where your lead elbow is pointing relative to your grip. Do what comes naturally to you. And if that works great, then great, do that. If it doesn't, then play around with other elbow pointing things. Not really the way I would go about trying to figure things out. What I would do is if I was someone who's trying to get better, I would look at what my ball flight and contact issues are, and then I would try to make changes that specifically directly improve those issues, right? as opposed to just kind of throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing what works. But if you're someone who's you're already hitting the ball good and you're just trying to kind of like play around and see, well, I wonder if I could hit the ball a little bit better if I do this, or I'll hit it worse if I do this. That's totally fine. But there's no really such thing as a perfect setup that fits every single person, right? It's really specific to the golfer. All right, so Mark Y says, "Hey Q, is it okay to chip or putt out of the trap if there is not much of a lip to go over?" I mean, you certainly can. I'm not a fan. If I'm not a fan of chipping it out of there, because if you chip it out of there, you're just asking to flub it, because that club is just going to want to dig. So I would say no to the chipping, because the club's just going to want to dig into the sand. Putting you can get away with. You just putting it through. Definitely something you want to practice, because it does definitely take some practice to understand how hard you need to hit the ball to get it to come out. So putting is okay, but chipping is usually not going to work well. Too high of a risk because you're just going to have to pick that ball so perfectly cleanly, and there's too high of a risk of blading it and or chunking it, which is the more likely scenario than picking it clean. So putting it okay, or hit your normal kind of bunker sand blast shot. What I will say is that if you are someone who really struggles with the bunker shot, because I imagine that's why you're asking the question, because you feel like it might be easier to chip or putt it. I would highly recommend checking out the C3i wedge. It just makes bunker shots a lot easier because you don't have to open up the face. It has a super high bounce on it, so all you have to do is set up square with it and swing through. And because it has so much bounce on it, it will glide through the sand. So that's what I would recommend if you're someone who struggles out of bunker shots, is that C3i wedge. Check it out. C, the letter C, the number 3, the letter I, C3i wedge. Do Google search. You'll find what I'm talking about. Goes on to say, also, if yes, any tips on how to execute that type of chip putt? So again, no chipping. I would not chip. But putting, you just set up to it just like you would a normal putt. It's all about just hitting it with the right speed, right? So practice it so that way you can get a feel for it. That's what that comes down to. All right, so Mark S says, when hitting a bunker shot, do you open the club face and then grip the club, or do you grip the club and then open the club face? You open the club face and then grip the club, because if you grip the club and then open the face, that's really not doing anything, right? That's not really opening the face. You're just turning your hands, right? And odds are you're not going to come back to impact in that same position, right? So this is how he'd say it. If this is my normal grip, club straight up and down. Now I'm going to take that club. I'm going to keep my grip the same. I'm just going to open up the face. Now the club face is open relative to my hands, right? That's what I need. That's what I need to keep the loft on there. So yeah, open up the face and then take the grip. All right, let's keep going. So RX Mike says, can you review how to work on a proper grip? How to know if you have the club handle too much in the fingers? Higher to keep a short lead hand thumb. I can get the short thumb at setup, but it tends to elongate down the shaft during the swing. Yeah, so basically the way that we want to do it, it goes partially in the fingers, partially in the hand. The way I would think about it, let me get my screen back here. So on our hand, we have this crease where the fingers go into the palm, right? So the way I would think about it is the grip is going to go below the pointer, but above the pinky on that crease. All right, so see how it's below my pointer here? Let me do this. Oh, this pen's too fine point. Well, I don't really have a pen that's going to be able to mark on there, but we want it below this crease, so the grip would be going through right here. and above this crease, so the grip will be going through right there. So if I put that in my hand, that's like that. That's with my lead hand. And now you can see if I grip down the club, now I have the short thumb, right? And it's below my heel pad over here. The heel pad is this meaty part of your hand over here, this meaty part. That's the heel pad. So I want that to be basically on top of the grip there, right? And then what I want to do is I want to have my finger close to my hand. I don't want to have a big gap like that because that's going to make it move around. I want to have it close like that. All right, so that's how the lead hand goes on there, and that's whether you have a strong or weak grip. If I have a weak grip, it's going to be on there where my thumb's more on top, right? If I have a stronger grip, it's the same thing. My hand's just more on top instead of my thumb. My thumb's more on the side, right? So that'd be like a strong grip. All right. Now with my trail hand, now let's go back to that though. If I have it too much in my fingers, that's where my long thumb's going to be, right? If it's too much, and then I'm going to have gapping. If I have it too much in my hand, I have the short thumb, but now I have all this gaps, right? So a little bit in the fingers, a little bit in the thumb, clamp down. Now I don't have all the gaps, and I have the nice short thumb. With the trail hand, what I want you to look at, again, we got the meaty part of the hand on the thumb side. We call that the thumb pad. And then we got on the heel side. In between there, there's going to be a crease. Your thumb, your lead thumb, is either going to be, your crease is going to be on top of that thumb or it's going to be on the side, right? Most people, it's going to be better if it's a little bit more on the side because most people struggle with getting the club face closed. So if we have it a little bit more on the side, that makes it easier to get the club face closed, right? So think about it this way. If my right hand's more on top of the grip, right? So let's say my right hand's on top of the grip like that. That's as much as I can twist it down, right? If I have it more, let's say I have it way under the grip like this. Now look at how much I can twist it. There's so much more, right? It's so much easier to get the club face closed. It's kind of an extreme example, but it shows what I'm saying. All right. So again, I have it like that, and then with my trail hand here, I'm going to put that right on top or on the side of a little bit, and then I'm just going to grip it the same way. I want to have my thumb close to my hand. I don't want to have a big gap right there because I don't want the club working around it. I want to have that. I want to have my thumb in there close, just like if I was handing you something. I'd want to have that in there close. Now, whether you use an interlock, overlap, or 10-finger grip, all of those are completely fine, whatever works best for you. I use an interlock. That's what most golfers use, most professional golfers use from what I've seen. So now you can see that's the grip. That's how you make sure that you have a nice, secure grip, right? And when you do that, you can see how I used to think, oh, I'm my thumb sliding down the grip, but really what's happening is that when you do an interlock grip, it kind of feels like that because of how your hands are going on there, right? So you can see my thumb, if I hold it like this, right, you can see how it's not a really long thumb. But if I put my hand in there, right, because my finger comes out a little bit more, right, it looks like it's a long thumb, but it really isn't. Right. So you can see how I have this on there kind of on the side of my thumb. Right. And then I have my thumb closed down so it's not moving around everywhere. If you do that, that's going to help you get a nice secure grip. They're not very expensive. These grip trainers, they're just grips that you can put on a club, or you can buy them already kind of connected on something, but they're not very expensive. And they have like the ridges on them that conform and basically force your hands to be in the right spot. I'd recommend training with one of those. There's been video footage of professional golfers like Scotty Scheffler using those as well. So it's not like that's for beginners or anything like that. The best players in the world train the fundamentals. The grip is a fundamental thing that you want to keep pretty consistent, right? So yeah, train the grip so that way it's not getting way off on you. So I'd highly recommend checking out one of those grip trainers as well. Let me see if I can find one that I would recommend because there's different ones. I've seen some that aren't really what I would recommend. Let's see here. Grip. So all I'm doing is just searching on Amazon Golf Grip Trainer. Yeah, I don't really like that one. This one's good. So yeah, $10. I mean, so this is just for the grip part. You would have to put it on a club. Let me put it in the chat. which if you have an extra club laying around, you can just put it on that. I just put it into the chat there. And then let me go back. They had one here that was connected. All right, so here we go. There's this one. This one, it's connected to like a weighted kind of trainer thing. It says it's like a tempo trainer kind of thing. It's $33, but it's got the grip trainer on there. I'll put that in the chat as well. If you don't have like an extra club you want to connect that to. There you go. So yeah, check those out. Those would be a great way to kind of train the grip and help you get a little bit more, comfortable with it. All right, let's keep going. So Larry L says, I really struggle with distance control with my putting. Is there any way to practice distance control at home? Yes, there's lots and lots and lots of ways. I would check out our Toss We Golf putting section. There's lots of things in there. The one thing that I like to do is the ladder drill. I think this is a great drill for working on speed control. Obviously, it's better to work on this at the course, but you can certainly work on this at home. If you have carpet, or you can get a putting mat. There's lots of affordable putting mats out there. But basically what I would do is I would have a ball. This would kind of be your initial kind of object ball here. And then I would maybe place a tee down or another ball or something like that, or just know where you're always starting from. And what I'm going to do is just try to putt it to that ball without basically get as close to it without going past it, right? And I want to see how many balls I can fit in here. All right. So I'm going to try to putt this one and try to put it. And again, line does not matter here. The only thing we're focused on is speed. And I actually think this is a great drill as well, because I think that a lot of people struggle with speed on their putts because they're so focused on the line, right? Once we get the putt lined up, that's it. We don't need to think about line anymore. All of your brain power needs to be about how much energy you need to give this ball, right? So if we take that out of the equation, I'm just trying to put it in the general direction of this ball. I'm not lining it up or anything. I'm not trying to get it perfectly lined up. I'm just trying to put it in the general direction of that ball. And my goal is going to be to get as close to this ball without hitting it. It's like the old the pool, to see who breaks first. When you hit it and to see, you bounce it back to see how close you can get to the rail. It's kind of the same thing here, but I'll show you how it changes, so that way you're getting a different speed every time. All right, so I'm going to try to putt to this without going past it. Well, that was not a good effort. I putted almost the same distance, so I got a 0 on that one. I'm going to start over. All right, so now I'm going to make an adjustment. I knew I just hit that too hard. I'm going to make an adjustment. My carpet here in my office is a little bit faster than I thought it was. All right. So there we go. That's pretty good there. So I got it within a couple inches. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ball that I putted it to. I'm going to bring that one back, and now I'm going to do it again. All right, so I'm just going to try to putt it to that ball without going past it. Again, I do not care about the direction. All I care about is the speed. So that's my second one. So I'm going to do that again. Try to put that close to it without going past it. All right, not doing too bad. About 6 inches short on that one. Again, I'm going to try to putt to that. I think you guys get the idea of what I'm doing here. That was not a great effort. Way too short, right? But that's going to make it difficult for me to fit a lot of balls in here, right? So basically, I would play that out until until basically it's too close and I can't put it to it anymore, or I putt past it. And then that's my score. So let's say I got, 7, right? Well, now I know that's my score that I want to beat now. So I'm going to keep trying to do that until I beat that score, right? And, if I can get 8, then I get 9, I get 10. So we have a measurable, improvement. Let's say this week I worked on it, and the best I could do is a 7. Then I worked on it next week, and I got to where I could get 8. And I worked on it the next week after that, I get to a 9. So I know that I'm getting better and better at controlling my speed. So that's one that you can do. And I would just keep it the same distance every time. So, if you have space for a 12-foot putt, I would always make it starting out at 12 feet. So that way you're comparing apples to apples on your skills, right? And then you work through the drill. So that's one that you can do at home for the speed control. There's lots more. Pretty much anything you can do on the golf course, you can do at home. You might need to be a little bit creative, with how you do it. I have, these are nice to have at home. I don't even know where I got this, to be honest. I think it might have been like a gift bag or something at a golf tournament. But I like this thing. It's just like it just sits on the ground. You can put it anywhere. You pack it in your suitcase and you put it in there. It's the same size of a hole. And if you make it, right, it just goes in there. Right? It just goes in there as if it's going in a hole. Right? If it's going too fast, it won't go in. So I like that because you can do stuff at home, with that. And there's all kinds of drills that you can do. So check out our putting, Toss Golf putting system. With lots of drills in there for speed control. If you want to get to that, click the instruction tab, and then click the Tough Speed Golf system, and then, click the instruction tab. Yeah, Tough Speed Golf system, and then you can get to the Tough Speed Golf putting system. So Paul B says, do you have any favorite golf books dealing with the short game? Any thoughts on Dan Greaves' book on the 3 releases versus, say, Dave Pell's Short Game Bible? So I have not read either one of those books. I'm trying to think if I've read any short game books. I mean, I've read some books that have short game in them, but it wasn't anything that, I can't say that I took anything from them that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that now necessarily. Yeah, sorry, I don't really like Tiger's book. It has some short game stuff in it, but I can't remember exactly what's in it. Jack Nicklaus's book had some short game stuff in it, but again, I don't remember exactly what was in there. My brain nowadays is kind of it's a melting pot of all the things that, I don't remember exactly where I learned something necessarily. I just have it in my head. Unfortunately I don't have any short game books that come off the top of my head. I wish I did, but I don't at the moment. But I can tell you, there's lots and lots of great information out there. I mean, we have the chipping mastery course, which is great. The wedge system, which is great. So there's lots of stuff on there. 3 releases. So I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but I mean, if you're, chipping, sometimes you're changing the trajectory. So I like to have a high, normal, and low trajectory. So that's going to involve 3 different kind of releases of the club, right? For the higher trajectory shot, you're going to release it a little bit earlier. And I don't know if this is what the Dan Greaves fella is that you're talking about. I don't know if this is what he's referring to. But let's say I'm trying to hit one high, right? Well, I'm gonna release that club so that way I have a little bit more loft on it. Now I'm still gonna have my hands ahead. So if I was hitting a shot high, right, I put the ball a little bit forward in my stance. I would open the face. I would use a high lofted wedge, right, and I would release it a little bit earlier. So my impact might look like this, right, and that's gonna get the ball to go higher. Right? If I'm doing a normal trajectory shot, I would have the ball roughly about the middle of my stance, right? And my impact position would look more like this, right? My hands are a little bit more forward, the ball's more in the middle of my stance, right? And that's going to come out a little bit lower. If I was trying to hit it, that would be a medium trajectory. If I was trying to hit it low, the ball position would be a little bit more back, hands would be a little bit more forward, and I would drive the hands more forward, right? So my release, I may look like this at impact, and my release may not get past my hands, right? The club head may not get past my hands. So you can see when I come through, this is low. You can see how that club head does not pass my hands. That would be in line with my hands. That would be past my hands. So for medium trajectory, right, I would probably get in line with my hands. For high trajectory, forward, open face, I would let that club head go past my hands. If I'm going low, back in the stance, drive hands forward, club head would stay behind my hands. So I don't know if that's what he's referring to, but if it was, it would make sense because that's what I would recommend as well. So Paul B says, "Yeah, you're on the right track there. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. There's a lot more to it than that. I mean, that's just going in the trajectory of the shots, right? So there's other things, as well, other than how you release the club." All right, we got a few minutes left here. If we have any more questions. All right, we got a few minutes left here if anybody has any more questions. If not, no worries. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.